Hey folks, so I've kind of been absent for the past couple of days. I've had some stuff that I've been working on, uh, but I wanted to do a video response to another creator's video. Yesterday, PrepperNation, and I try to watch a few channels as much as I can just to try to support my fellow creators here on YouTube. One of the ones I really like watching is PrepperNation, but he posted a video yesterday or late last night. I'm not sure exactly when it came out, about Tractor Supply, and there were a couple of other channels that have posted about Tractor Supply over the past day or two, and I'm kind of late speaking about it. But for those that don't know, Tractor Supply was caught sponsoring a what was reported as a family-friendly drag show in I believe it was in Waco, Texas. It was in Texas. I believe it was in Waco. And PrepperNation went on to say that his opinion of it was that, and me, he shares a similar opinion that I do, that we don't necessarily agree with that lifestyle, but as somebody who loves freedom, values freedom and liberty, I can't support or say I support liberty and freedom while at the same time denying somebody the right to live the way they want to live. I mean, I can support you living a certain lifestyle even though I don't necessarily agree with it. And in these days, a lot of people would find some kind of issue with that. They would consider that to be contradictory, but to me it's not. I mean, because if I'm able to support the rights of somebody I disagree with, then it's obvious that I'm supporting freedom, true freedom of choice, freedom to live the way you want to live, and freedom to do the things that you want to do. I don't have to agree with that. A good example of that is if you have an opinion which I personally find stupid. I mean, if you value, let me see if I can figure out how to put this. I don't agree with being ignorant and uneducated. But if there's somebody out there that they believe wholeheartedly the best way to go through life is completely ignorant, completely uneducated of the things that are happening around them, I don't agree with that. But if that's the way you feel like you need to live your life, if you feel that's the best way to live your life, it's your life to live. I'm not going to force my beliefs. I'm not going to force my opinion on you. It's as simple as that. And I will actually fight to defend people's right to live the way they want to live. Again, I don't necessarily agree with that lifestyle. And I've actually had discussions with individuals where I was defending people that live that lifestyle. Not because I agree with it, but because it's their life, and they have the right to live it how they choose to. They're not hurting me, they're not hurting anybody, as long as they're not hurting me or anybody else, as long as they're not trying to force their beliefs, their views on anybody else, they're not breaking any laws, they're not hurting anybody. They have the right to live however they want, regardless of how ridiculous I think it is. I've actually had disagreements with some conservatives where I would actually defend these people. Again, I don't agree with the lifestyle, but I support their right to live how they choose to. I can support their freedoms and their rights without agreeing with the way they live. Just like if somebody says something I completely disagree with, again, I don't have to agree with them to defend their right to free speech. So, again, just to be clear, I don't agree with the lifestyle. But as long as they're not hurting anyone and they're not forcing their beliefs on somebody else under coercion, as long as they're not breaking any laws, I could care less. Here's the problem, though, and this is what PrepperNation brought up, and I agree with him 100%. The problem comes in where they were trying to bring children into it. And I have a very big problem with trying to manipulate and expose children to sexualization in any form, not just that form. I don't care if it's a hypersexualized beauty contest. That's not right. You don't bring children into that. These ideas shouldn't be forced on children, and children shouldn't be exposed to them at a young age. That's just my belief. So, anyway, to get back to my point, I mean, I agreed with him completely on all of these points. And I'll try to link to his video down below. But he went on to say that he had done some research and found that there were 551 companies that, or Bloomberg had done some research and had gathered together 551 companies that supported and sponsored this type of thing. And one of these companies that has recently come to light is Tractor Supply. Now they're facing a lot of fallout from their decision. They're claiming they thought it was family friendly, that they didn't know what was going on, and I don't believe that for a second. Neither does he. But he went on to theorize that he believes that these companies are not doing this willingly, because see, a company is in business to make a profit. They're going to do what they think is whatever is in the best interest of the company and whatever will bring them more money. And if the views and opinions of the public sway a certain direction, then they're beholden to their shareholders to redirect that company to stay in line with the current needs of society, I guess you could say. Because their ultimate goal is not necessarily to push social agenda, it's to maintain profitability and legitimacy in an ever-changing world. And a lot of people hate them for that. A lot of people hate companies for that. But it's just doing business. When you go into that kind of business, your job is to make money, and if you're doing a product, producing a product, or doing business in a certain way that suddenly becomes unpopular, it's your obligation, especially if there are shareholders involved, to change direction, reevaluate how you do business, and do what needs to be done to maintain profitability. You have a responsibility to shareholders, but not only to the shareholders, but also to the employees of that company. You have a responsibility, an obligation to stay in business because people count on those jobs for livelihood. So companies don't take these stances because they want to. They do it because they deem it necessary to stay solvent and profitable. It's not necessarily their job to push social change. And one of the things he brought up was that he thought they were being forced to do this. At the time he didn't understand exactly what was going on or how, but he felt that they were being forced and coerced to push these changes, much like a social credit score that you see in China. Okay, so here's my response to that. He's absolutely right. And a lot of people aren't aware of it, but it's called the ESG. Back in 2001, somewhere around there, it was about 20 years ago, the United Nations developed the ESG score. And what it stands for, ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance score. It's a policy that essentially forces companies to take on socially responsible behaviors to adapt to changing times, changing opinions, and viewpoints. Well, fast forward a few years, I think it was around 2015 or so, the ESG was picked up by the World Economic Forum. And they started pushing it as well. And then in the past couple of years, suddenly the SEC, which oversees all of the regulation for how companies, especially investors, manage money and do business, they set the regulation for all of that. All of the investments, how people's money are used, who can be invested in what. The SEC determines all of that, and they do so arbitrarily. These rules and policies that they come up with are not voted on by anybody. The SEC, as an independent body, come up with these policies at will, whenever the whim suits them. So that organization determined that because there was a large amount of people that wanted to push certain socially acceptable policies and agendas, they decided to start pushing it as well with companies. So they came up with this policy essentially that companies would have to abide by this or suffer the consequences. Now the consequences being, and I'm being overly simplified in this. You can do your own research, though I'm going to provide some links below so that you can read up on this. But essentially, if you want to, as a company, remain profitable and solvent, you have to abide by these policies. If you don't abide by these policies, and you don't have to per se, but the consequences are that investors may not invest money in your business, banks may not loan you money, to improve or expand your business. And there is going to be, at some point, a push to have consumers make decisions that can financially punish companies that don't comply with these ESG policies. So essentially, this is for everybody that's heard of the social credit score in China. This is essentially the same thing, but instead of for individuals, it's for companies, corporations, businesses. So, and don't think that it's just going to stop there. It's going to continue on to be pushed on individuals. It's already happening. If you look at what was going on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, censorship of non-popular ideas. Look at Twitter. Look at what happened with Twitter. Anything conservative was being silenced and banned on Twitter until Musk took over. And it was suddenly when Elon Musk purchased Twitter, that everybody started screaming censorship and racism and all of that, completely ignoring the fact that under Democrats, they were openly and aggressively censoring conservatives. So the social credit score is taking hold already. There's some pushback on it, but it is being implemented. But the ESG is the equivalent of that social credit score for corporations, and it's being pushed hard, and there's very little, if any, pushback on it. So if you've wondered why all of these companies keep going woke, all of these companies keep doing things that seem stupid, getting involved in social issues that really aren't any of their business, well, that's why. They're being forced to, because they're essentially being told that if they don't support these policies, if they don't support these regulations and what have you, there may come a time when they may not be able to get the money they need to grow their business, expand their business, and they may lose customers. And again, a company is going to do whatever they have to remain profitable for their shareholders, their owners, their employees. That's the whole purpose of a corporation being in existence, to make money. So, as I was saying, PrepperNation was talking like he thought they were being coerced and forced to do this, not necessarily because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. And he felt like it was similar to the credit score situation in China. Well, he's absolutely correct, and that is why. That is the whole situation summed up in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot more to it than what I explained. But that is essentially what's happening. They are being forced to do this under the threat of financial repercussions for not complying, for lack of a better word. So, this is why, right now a lot of people are talking about blacklisting companies that do this. Basically flipping cancel culture around and using that same method against the people that are using it against us. So you'll hear people talk about, stop doing business with these companies. Well, right now, there are 551 companies on that list. Tractor Supply is just one of many. And the problem is, even though Tractor Supply is suffering the consequences right now, they're facing an unbelievable amount of backlash. I don't think it's going to change anything because the public as a whole can't be consistent, or at least hasn't shown any consistency in the last few years. A good example is what happened with Coke a while back when they came out with this how to be less white training program, or whatever it was that came out that everybody raised Cain about. That lasted for a couple of weeks. Yeah, they took a hit over that couple of weeks, but then everybody forgot about it. Everybody continued to do business with them, and things smoothed over. Well, the same thing's going to happen with Tractor Supply. You know, it'll hurt them for right now, but people have a real short memory. They're not going to be able to maintain any kind of social response to this behavior. So I would say give it a couple of weeks, and Tractor Supply's numbers, financial numbers, will actually show that things will smooth over. People will only be upset for a little while. And I want to go back to what I was said in the beginning, is like my whole point of this, and PrepperNation's point as well, was it's not that there was a drag show. You know, that was their choice. You know, people that live that lifestyle, that they can do what they want. But when you bring children into it, that's where I draw the line. Like him, that's where I draw the line. It's unacceptable. You shouldn't be using children to push something like that. You shouldn't use children to push sexualization of anything or anyone in any shape, form whatsoever. And to me, that's what upsets me. You know, we've seen things like that happen with Netflix, many other companies. This is going to continue to happen until people stand up and say enough is enough. Leave the children alone. But the whole thing being that a lot of these social ideas that are being pushed right now, they have to be pushed to children, because they have to change the mindset of these children to pave the way for normalcy in the future. That's how they've made as much change as they have so far, and it's going to be the playbook going forward. And at some point, we have to stand up and say, enough. We've got to protect the children. And to me, that's one thing where I draw the line. That you shouldn't be talking about anything like that with young children. That's my whole problem with it. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because I know he was talking. I agreed pretty much with everything he said, but he just acted like he didn't understand what the whole thing behind it was, that there was something there that he just didn't understand. And I've been reading about the ESG score for better part of a year now. So this is something I've read up on a lot. I've listened to a lot of people talk about. And the score is going to allow them to push whatever socially acceptable agenda or narrative that they want to push. If that's delivering weapons to certain people, for certain reasons, then they're going to support that. They're going to push that. If it's to push racism or discrimination against a certain group of people in the name of social responsibility, that'll happen too. That's the problem with using things like this to push social narratives, is that there's no accountability, really. And at some point, that policy that they're putting into effect will be used to push an agenda that targets a different group, and it's not going to be a pleasant result. I mean, right now the agenda is conservatives are bad, everything else is good, but that can flip at any time, and it can go back to what a lot of people are afraid of. It can go to, well, a certain race is bad, a certain religion is bad, free speech is bad, which is what's happening right now. Gun ownership is bad. That's happening now as well. But it can get more specific. And we all know what the results of that can be. We've already seen that in the past 80 to 90 years. We've already seen the results of something similar to that. So this is something we need to be cognizant of, something we need to stay aware of, and by being aware of it, we can adjust and maybe even push back on some of this stuff. But anyway, that was my response. That's all I really wanted to talk about, was just give my 2 cents into what was actually going on and what was actually pushing these companies to behave the way they're behaving. In case a lot of people have been wondering, and I know there's a lot that out there that have been, this is why they're doing what they're doing. This is why they're saying what they're saying. This is the whole point of the be less white, apologize for your whiteness that's been coming out, which, if you ask me, is nothing more than another form of racism. And right now, it's a socially acceptable form of racism. Whenever you've got one extreme, the natural tendency is at some point it's going to balance out, and then it's going to switch to the opposite extreme. So, yeah, for years there was this policy in this country. There was this belief that if you were black, you were, or if you were Native American or any other color like that, you were inferior to whites, and you didn't have the same rights and freedoms and privileges. But I'm starting to see that flip into the exact opposite direction, because we're starting to see a lot of socially acceptable discrimination towards white people and towards conservatives. And you can hate me for saying that if you want, but that's the truth. If you take some of these things that have happened over the past few years, the Be Less White from Coca-Cola, the Apologize for Your Whiteness from Salvation Army, and other places like that, other things like that. If you replaced that white with black, or any other race for that matter, people would be screaming racism, and there would be protests in the streets. But we're seeing it aimed towards white people now, and conservatives, and politicians, celebrities. People like that are supporting it. They're not only condoning it, but they're actually supporting it. And this is a dangerous trend, because while, yes, there was at one point inequality as far as, minorities were considered inferior, we came close to a good balance. It wasn't perfect. There was still a lot of issues with it, but we were reaching an equilibrium. And now, is starting to flip the other direction. And there's just, if you look for it and pay attention, you can find it. You can see it all around you. And the end result, unfortunately, is not going to be pleasant. No more pleasant than it was originally, when it was the other direction. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about, was my views and my opinions on why companies were doing this, when it's not necessarily in their purview to push these ideas and policies. It's their job to make product, perform a business or service, and make money. This is why they're doing this, though. This ESG score. They're being forced to by elites and other people in power. So anyway, I hope you found this useful. I hope it explained a little bit to you about why things are the way they are right now and why they're going to continue to get worse. I'm going to put some links down below so you can do some research. And I highly advise everybody, whenever a subject like this comes up, don't just take one person's word for it. Don't take one creator's word for it. Do your own research. Dig into it and read. Don't read, and I don't mean, don't even read from one news source or media source. Use a broad spectrum. Do a bunch of searches in places that are contrary to your normal stance on things. I know it's uncomfortable to look at things that you don't agree with, but if you look at the broad spectrum of things and not just one news source or one source of information, you'll get a bigger picture of what's going on and why. And then from there, you can actually think critically and make up your own mind about the situation. And that's what I highly recommend you do. Do your research, read up on it, use a lot of different sources, not just one source, and think about it and make up your own mind. Make your own decisions. Anyway, I hope you found this useful and informational. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, folks, take care. I'll catch you later.